Welcome, everyone. I am Bob Wurzelbacher, the director of the Respect Life Office of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and this is our video podcast series that we call Being Pro-Life. Each month, we'll discuss a different topic in the Respect Life arena. We'll hear a personal story from someone deeply affected by that issue, and finally, we'll share ways that you can get involved. This month's topic is foster care. Today, we have several guests. Will you please introduce yourselves?
Susan Walther, and I am the Director of Warren County Children's Services.
My name is Dana Gershner, and I'm the Supervisor of Foster Care at Warren County Children's Services.
I'm Andy Crosby, and this is my wife, Emily Crosby, and we are foster parents here in Warren County.
My name is Jamin, and I am a foster child. I've been in foster care 4 years now, and I am 16 years old.
All right, Dana and Susan, let's start with you. You work with foster care, so can you tell us a little bit about the state of foster care here in Ohio, and then more specifically where you work in Warren County?
Well, in Ohio, we've seen a 27% increase in children entering care since 2013. As you can imagine, that would create a situation where we would need many more foster parents to take in the kids.
Warren County currently has roughly 164 children in care and only 64 foster homes. So that's leading to us pushing placement of our children out into residential treatment facilities and group homes and foster homes outside of our county. I think roughly 60% of our kids are placed out of county. That terminates their relationships with their schools, with some of their friends, and it makes it really hard for them to visit their family.
So Dana and Susan, you talked about a 27% increase in the need for foster care in recent years. So is there something going on in society that's causing that to increase so abruptly?
Well, the opiate crisis that everyone's experienced in the entire United States, increase in substance abuse, mental health concerns, these are all reasons why we've seen an increase in children coming into care. When the children are coming into care, we're not seeing them leaving care as much.
Is it common, and if so, why is it common for children to bounce around to a lot of different foster homes?
It is a challenge that we do have. And one way at Warren County we're trying to combat that challenge is that we are making referrals to a program called MRSS, the Mobile Response Stabilization Service, which will go into the home and work with the foster parents in dealing with the traumas that the children experience. Because a lot of the times when children do go to foster homes, they'll act out, their behavior will be terrible, they're doing things that are very shocking, and a lot of it is just a reaction to the trauma being pulled from a home. We want to work with those foster parents so they better understand how to deal with that trauma.
So Susan and Dana, what is the greater need?
We have 64 homes currently, and I would say less than 5 of those homes will take children above the age of 6.
And yet what percentage of children are over 6?
60% of our children are over the age of 6.
Such a small percentage can take them over 6, and over half of them are over 6. So those children, as you said, must be in residential treatment homes or other facilities like that right now.
Or placed outside of our county in homes.
It's awful enough to be taken out of your home, but at least if you're in the same school and you have the same friends, that's not quite as traumatic. All right, so Emily and Andy, let's turn to you. So tell us, why were you interested in becoming foster parent?
On both sides, we have either people that have fostered and adopted, or families like grandparents who have taken in nieces and nephews and have done kinship care. His family, my family. So it's something that we both were aware of, and it was something we always knew we would do. However, we always thought it would be something we would do later in life. After we had our daughter, 3 years after we were married, our daughter was born prematurely. She was very sick after she was born. And after that, we knew we wouldn't be able to have any more biological children. We knew maybe we're going to start doing this a little bit sooner than we thought. And we started looking to adoption. And so we hit all the avenues. We hit private adoption. We hit international adoption. We talked to lots of different agencies. And then we talked to the county about foster care, to adopt through foster care. And we knew that God laid that on our heart. There was no doubt in our mind that that's where we were supposed to be. So we got our license. We went through all our classes, did our home study. We were licensed in December. It was the beginning of January. Dana called us and said, I have a little boy that needs a home, but I need to know if you'll take his little brother when he's born. And we gotten approved for 2. Well, we weren't expecting to. While we were excited, we were very nervous at the same time. But we knew that the Lord was preparing our hearts for this. And so our daughter was 2 at the time. Andrew came when he was 18 months old. His brother was born in April, and he was born addicted to heroin. And that was tough. He was on methadone and all of those things.
There would be many late nights where he would screech like a monkey because he was going through so many different pains, things like that. And just being able to comfort him and try to love him through that, it taxes anybody, let alone parents, new foster parents.
We only actually got to meet their mom 3 times. She disappeared and we didn't see her again, unfortunately. From what we understand, their biological parents now are doing better, but they made some choices back then that were not safe and not healthy. They couldn't recover in an amount of time that was safe for them. So our boys' case did go to adoption. They were adopted within 15 months of living with us. So our kids are all pretty close in age. They fall like 1 year right after the other, even with our daughter. So we had 3 in diapers at one time. So that was very exciting. Our original plan, like I think a lot of people who come to the foster care system, it was to grow our family. But when we got involved in the system from the beginning, God changed our hearts and maybe our motivations. We thought we were going to have to foster a really long time before we had the opportunity to adopt.
When you go through training statistics that they give you, the majority of children get to go back home. Well, that wasn't our case. Our first placement went to adoption, and that doesn't
brothers and a
always
newborn.
happen. Yes.
But God really moved in our hearts that this was going to be a lifelong ministry for us. So after our boys' adoption, Andy was in school. So we went to kind of like a break where we just did respite care. So we kept our license open, but we just took kiddos that were in other homes, whether their families were traveling or they had a family emergency.
Yeah, just like a break.
That's interesting. So Emily and Andrew, we haven't touched on that part yet. So there are obviously many different options for foster families. You can be a family that's looking to foster to adopt, but you can also be someone who's only opening their home on temporary bases for people who need, what did you call that, respite care?
It's called respite. Yes, you still have to be a licensed foster parent. It's someone who just provides emergency placements or when families are going on vacation and the kids aren't allowed to travel. I know some people are like, oh, you wouldn't take your foster children on vacation, but a lot of times they're not allowed to travel out of state and people are going to go visit their families and you need a place for those kids to go. So that's what we did for a couple of years while Andy was finishing school. We developed great relationships with other families and with these kids. So there were 3 kids that came to us regularly. We were the fun family. They got to come hang out with us and they knew where they were coming. It wasn't scary for them. It was like, oh, we know where we're going. It was no big deal. And then when we moved, we got back into fostering full time, but we only foster now. Then we've had kids who've come into our home. Their mom worked really well with her, helped her, built a relationship with her, and helped her get her kids back home. And that was one of the most joyous things we've been able to do. Again, it doesn't always happen like that, but when we can help build families, that's our goal. How important it is for the kids that are living in your home to see that you are on their parents' side. They should never hear you talk negatively about their parents, ever. We pray with our kids about their parents before they go to bed, if they want to. We always ask them. But it usually puts a pretty big smile on their face when we are meeting kids for the first time and they want to talk about their parents. So I say, tell me about your mommy's eyes, or tell me, and it usually puts a, like, I'm allowed to talk about my mom. I'm allowed to talk about my dad. Hey, it's your mom. That's your dad. Of course you can talk about them. But letting them know that you're on their side. And a lot of times it's all it takes is for birth parents to know that you're not their enemy.
So Jamin, let's turn to you. Can you tell us your story?
I lived in Hamilton till the age of 2 or so. And that's when my mom and my dad started butting heads and they split. And my grandma and my dad was who I was staying with. So my sister, Trinity, she is 21 now. She's in jail, actually. She did not get into the foster system quick enough, I guess, for people to turn her life around because she basically just took after my mom. So I ended up living with my grandma. Like, I never really saw her very much. Like, she'd always just be sleeping, like, somewhere faded or whatever, high. So my sister mostly took care of me, but my sister's in 2nd grade, so that doesn't really match up so well, but she did what she could. Anyways, flash forward 9 months, my mom gets us back, and we live with her now, and she was selling drugs because she's my mom. One time, though, I was over at my grandma's house, and my dad was there because I was on a weekend visit, and he was on drugs as well, because that's just how my family is. My whole family is drugs. And so he gets in like an argument with my grandma, and my grandma ended up smacking him in the face. And he ended up like rushing me and my sister home to my mom. And then like I just didn't see him for a while after that. And nobody really knew where he was. He was missing. And then October 8th, 2008, he was found wrapped up in a rug, chicken wire, and duct tape. And he was in a creek, dead, obviously. And because he was just another junkie, I guess, to them. And so they just kind of dropped the case. After he died, I got really close to my uncle. And then a good 2 months after that, he died as well. He was doing heroin and stuff like that, but they didn't investigate him either. So, you know, my life's just kind of falling apart at this young age. And I guess it would be like a year or two later, we moved to a place in Middletown. It was like an apartment. And my sister has this dude coming around called Michael, and it's her boyfriend. And one day she left me at home with him, and he was scraping like a bowl, like a pipe. And I kind of was like, what are you doing? He's like scraping the resin out. And I'm like, what is that going to do? And he's like, you smoke it and it gets you high. And he gave it to me, and I smoked a couple hits. And so that's just a whole new problem for my life. Now I know what it's like to be high. So I'm just kind of sneaking around, smoking with my sister's boyfriend, smoking with my sister. We're living there, and this dude called Joe, he ends up coming around a lot. And I noticed that something's kind of off about him, though. At times, his eyes were really low and like out of it a little bit. We had watched Breaking Bad and everything, and so I know how heroin works. And I was just putting things together in my mind, like, are you guys doing heroin or what? And obviously, they would tell me no, so I would never do heroin. Bottom line was, though, she was, and he was too. And so he gets her pregnant. We got evicted because they spent their money on heroin instead of rent and bills that are supposed to be paid and food and everything. So our goal is to move back to Ohio to live with my grandma for like a little bit until they get on their feet. I forgot to mention my little brother. But yeah, my little brother was born when I was 8 as well. He was adopted at age 7, I'm pretty sure. He was adopted without me, and there's like no contact right now. So it's me, my grandma, my little brother, my mom, and Joe. We're all living in this house. And me and my little brother would go with my mom and Joe down to Cincinnati to buy drugs from this dude. I knew that's what they were doing. Who else goes all the way down to Cincinnati to meet some dude in a parking lot and gets in his car for just a second and then gets back out and we go back up? Like, that's drugs. And they're just kind of like denying it or whatever. And so I know what's up. My grandma knows what's up. So my mom and Joe have children's services called on them by my grandma. After my mom finds out that, we end up stealing my grandma's car and going to live with my other cousin. And so my mom ends up finding this agency out in Utah. They fly us out there. After my mom has a baby, they give her $5,000. We get back to Ohio. We meet Joe at the airport, and then literally the next day we find a house. And then I'm being left at home with my brother for 8 hours while my mom is gone until 12 o'clock a.m. So then a week later, a caseworker from Warren County, she just walks in, she just looks down and sees me and my brother just sitting there on air mattresses. And I go back and get my mom, and my mom comes out with Joe, and they're done. They're caught. Like, that's all there is to it. So police come, they run drug tests. My mom and Joe have heroin in their system and everything. So they're taken into custody. And by the end of the day, we end up in a foster home.
So, Jamin, you and your brother are how old at this point?
13.
And your little brother's like 4 or 5, and then you're both in the same home at this point.
I was determined you're not going to separate us. So we're in this home. My mom's supposed to be showing up to these rehab classes, and she hasn't been. And she was telling us that she was going to get us back. It was only going to be like a couple weeks or something. But that did not happen. So I ended up, though, getting like really depressed. And like, I just ended up wanting to kill myself. And I ended up going to a hospital. So I ended up moving to a group home after that. I didn't even know where my brother was, like, after a while. And my caseworker now ended up coming to get me. And she took me to the Buckeye Ranch, which is a residential treatment center. I was doing much better. And they ended up moving me to Midwestern Children's Home after 3 months. And I ended up finding God that's good for me. I don't want to use drugs anymore. I guess what I'm just saying is I've come a long way. Like, I feel like this was just God's plan all along.
Addictions, they never fully go away.
Yeah. Once an addict, always an addict.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with that right now, but you've been clean for how long then?
A year plus a month. Like, I just look forward to my future. Like, I want to become like an auto mechanic or something good and steady. And I want to have a wife and I want to have kids and I want to teach my kids about God at an early age. And I want to teach them about why not to use drugs at an early age. I'll be like, God is good. You need God. You don't need drugs. You need God.
All right, so Dana and Susan, let's go back to you. So we've heard some of the stories now of people who are experienced with the foster care system, and someone's just thinking maybe I could be a foster family. Tell us about that process.
We have a quick reference guide on the 5 steps it takes to be a foster parent. And that just goes over that you want to educate yourself. Call our agency. We're always available to answer any questions that you may have. And if you talk to us and it's something you still are interested in, you're going to want to make an inquiry. And you can do that on our website. It's showed right here on step number 2. And that inquiry will come to our agency and we'll contact you and send you out an additional email with lots more information and an application. Fill it out and turn it into our agency. Once we receive that application, you'll be assigned an assessor. An assessor will come out to your home, help you attend your pre-service training. We'll give you all the documents you need to complete your home study, and we'll walk you through that process. That process takes 3 to 6 months to complete.
You can find the website at co.warren.oh.us.
Yes, underneath Health and Family Services, you'll click on Children's Services,
There it is.
and that'll take you to our webpage. You can click on available children. All those children are available for adoption right now that are on that site.
So we can click on this first one, Meet Austin. You get a picture and you hear a little bit more about this one. Says Austin is a sweet, funny, helpful young man. He can be shy at first, but once he gets to know you, he is talkative. Austin enjoys watching movies, being around animals and Pokemon. Austin would do best in a home that can provide a routine and set clear boundaries. He will need continued counseling to help him cope with his past trauma.
Sounds like all of our kids.
That sounds like probably all of the kids.
It does. That's what every child needs, right?
So then, if you're not looking to be a foster family right now, as you point out, the second one, there's donation programs. Tell us about that.
Right now, what we're gearing up for is our Christmas donations, where if you would contact our agency, and Randy is actually in charge of this, she would give you an age of a child and what their needs are to provide Christmas for them. So you can buy one gift, but most likely we can provide the entire Christmas for the child.
So one way to donate is to specifically donate financially to give a child a better Christmas if they're in a situation where their family or lack of family can't afford any kind of a Christmas celebration for them. And it's November, so Christmas is coming.
So it really does make an impact. I mean, the memories of, to wake up Christmas morning and have that is huge. You can request a speaker to come speak to your organization about mandated reporting. And then the very last button would be the foster care adoption application.
So what happens when a child ages out of the foster care system? What age does that happen and what does that mean?
There are children who unfortunately never find permanency, which is one of our agency goals, and they have to age out of foster care, which is they're 18 or they graduate from high school and they're no longer in our custody. Our goal is to set them up in some type of independent living that they can move forward. And there are services throughout Ohio that are trying to help those youth. One of them is Bridges that help them bridge to adulthood. There is funding available for youth that age out of the system. We try to get them into education programs. But that's a real struggle for children who leave the foster care system without a forever home.
I've just recently became a licensed foster parent myself. I'm waiting for the call any day.
Oh my goodness. The phone could ring right now, I suppose, right? Theoretically, it could.
Yes, it could.
So Emily and Andrew, what other advice do you have for people who are questioning and wondering whether they want to start fostering?
I think one of the first things you should do is find another foster parent and become friends with them and just hang out with them, hang out with their family, but get a background check and hang out with the kids, get to know the family, let them mentor you, ask them a million questions.
So, Jamin, what do you have to say to people that are not very familiar with the needs of foster children out there?
There's kids out there that are worse off than me. There's kids out there that are better off than me, but all of them need a home. But there's a lot of kids that do not have the luxury of having a family. I don't even think it should be considered a luxury. I think it should just be considered something that is a need. And I think that everybody could help.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone for talking with us today about foster care, about the great number of children we have out there who need good foster families, how anyone can get involved, and for just sharing your stories.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bob, I really want to thank you for taking the time for Emily and I to be able to share our story. And we really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us and just give your heart to some kids, because there are plenty of kids out there who really need the love. They don't need the money. They just want the time and the attention.
No problem. I'm glad to have been on here. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun.
Thanks to everyone for talking with us today about foster care, the great number of children that we have out there who need good foster families, and how anyone can get involved. So I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in on this episode of our Being Pro-Life series. Head to the website to view all the links talked about in this episode at www.catholiccincinnati.org/being-pro-life. Thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to being with you next time.